Hello and most welcome to 2079 of our wondrous series. Today we're going to read a little bit from the book The Lightness of Being, Mass, Ether and the Unification of Forces by Frank Wilczek. Frankie Wilczek. And we will go to chapter 8. Chapter 8, The Grid, Persistence of Ether. I will take the liberty to make a little introduction myself here, because it's 2079 episode with it, and we have covered earlier a lot of this thinking. It started once upon a time with dear old Julian Barber, the British physicist who questioned, so to speak, or he didn't acknowledge space just as an empty stage, or it's not even in the Newtonian grid or Newtonian/Cartesian grid. It is not even empty. It's a stage setter, or we know that emptiness plays a role, and using the Newtonian grid causes havoc on physics. What is that havoc? What is the name of that havoc? The disaster. Well, it's not a small disaster. It means that we can actually not know the forces or the location or anything if we have more than 3 objects. 3 objects. Is that a lot? No, it's hardly a lot. It's called the 3-body problem. And when you study physics, it is ignored, because if you start with the 3-body problem, the empty stage becomes incredibly problematic. So it's empty space or empty stage is a setting that we need in Newtonian physics, but causes more problem than it solves in global physics, the whole take of the universe. And I begin to read now. What is space? An empty stage where the physical world of matter acts out its drama. An equal participant that both provides background and has a life of its own. Could that be more telling? Or the primary reality, of which matter is a secondary manifestation? Views on this question have evolved and several times changed radically over the history of science, to say the least. Today, the third view is triumphant, where our eyes see nothing, our brains, pondering the revelations of sharply tuned experiments, discover the grid that powers physical reality. So the grid is actually fundamental, more fundamental than matter. So it's a bit more than a stage setter. I think already by now it's become very, I wouldn't say complicated, but it's hard to grasp and it takes a lot of training. But we will soldier on a bit more. Philosophical and scientific ideas about what the world is made of continue to change. Many loose ends remain in today's best world models and some big mysteries. Clearly, the last word has not been spoken. But we know a lot too, enough to draw some surprising conclusions that go beyond piecemeal facts.
Piecemeal, yummy, yummy, yummy.
Piecemeal, let's have a little piecemeal, a snack.
Yummy. Cookie.
Oh, why not a tiropitakia? They address and offer some answers too. Questions that have traditionally been regarded as belonging to philosophy or even theology. I think that last thing is duly noted, should be noted. I think empty space is one of the things that haunts theology as well, and philosophy, of course. Maybe I should say philosophy and then theology. For natural philosophy, the most important lesson we learn from QCD is that what we perceive as empty space is in reality a powerful medium whose activity molds the world. Other developments in modern physics reinforce and enrich that lesson. Later, as we explore the current frontiers, we'll see how the concept of empty space as a rich, dynamic medium empowers our best thinking about how to achieve the unification of forces. And we can go to page 74, please, Helen. So, what is the world made of? Subject as ever to addition and correction, here is the multifaceted answer that modern physics provides. One, the primary ingredient of physical reality, from which all else is formed, fills space and time. Every fragment, each space-time element has the same basic properties as every other fragment. Newton. The primary ingredient of reality is alive with quantum activity. Quantum activity has special characteristics. It is spontaneous and unpredictable.
Oh. Yeah.
And to observe quantum activity, you must disturb it. The butterfly effect, as Sabine Hossenfelder said yesterday when we went into lecture 2078, even the movement of the molecules can turn the whole world, can cause the climate change, for instance. The primary ingredient of reality also contains enduring material components. These make the cosmos a multi-layered, multicolored superconductor. The primary ingredient of reality contains a metric field that gives space-time rigidity and causes gravity. The primary ingredient of reality weighs with a universal density. There are words, and I think this is important, that capture different aspects of this answer. Ether is the old concept that comes closest, but it bears the stigma of dead ideas and lacks several of the new ones. Space-time is logically appropriate to describe something that is unavoidably there, everywhere and always, with uniform properties throughout. But space-time carries even more baggage. It does actually, yeah? It's odd. And let me in parentheses add, this baggage is carried more outside physics than inside. Our language has changed according to Newtonian Cartesian space-time, including a heavy suggestion of emptiness, very important. I think everyone fears emptiness. What will happen when I die? Emptiness will be there. Everybody says like that after Descartes, Newton. Quantum field is a technical term that summarizes the first three aspects, but it does not include the last three. And it sounds, well, too technical and forbidding for use in natural philosophy. Well, I'm myself guilty of using that word. And I think Wilczek has a point here. I will use the word grid for the primary world stuff. That word has several advantages. We are accustomed to using mathematical grids to position layers of structure, as in figure 8.1. Next page, we can have a look at that one. So the old one is in A, the first neat little house. Look back my grandparents' house. It was also situated down a hill with a couple of trees, leaf trees, beaches. Not the beaches as you swim around, but the beech tree. B, speaking of beech tree, is the new, so to speak, idea. So the grid or the ether, maybe that's a good start. Start with the ether and then progress to the grid. Think of something that is both empty and not empty at the same time. There you have the grid. Do not think that an object like Nefertiti, who else? Don't think of her as surrounded by emptiness. This is actually what we say today. Here I have a statue surrounded by emptiness. This is the thing which surrounds is not the thing. Avoid that. Think that there is something more fundamental that harbors both Nefertiti and what's around her, and that is more fundamental. And the idea that there is one object, an empty space, is just one way, one of these grids. So you have several grids here. So that will sort of make the idea of an object more extensive or question it a bit. You can think of objects as not limited by space. And there is, I'm trying to be helpful here. I don't want to make this too long because this is way too hard a nut to crack. But most often we think, I think, because, listen up, I think we put a stop here. So that's plenty for today. So at the bottom of page 75, we put a stop to this lecture. And I will only read the footnote or the picture, the photo text to figure Y81. Grid, all the new. A grid is often used to describe how various things are distributed in space and also related to each other. B, the grid which underlies our most successful world model has several aspects. The grid with these aspects is present always and everywhere. Ordinary matter is a secondary manifestation. This is very important. It's a secondary manifestation. It's not original. You cannot derive reality from matter. So you can't start with an atom and sort of reduce everything to that. Tracing its level of excitation. Excitation being the last word.
Excitation.
Excitation.
Page 75 and page 75. Excitation.
So earlier I've been naming J.J. Gibson and Tony Shimura's idea of affordances. Heidegger could have speaking of Zug, Tyg, things for us, things that we use. Now we need to start there and sort of stretch the whole thing and accept that there are some sort of pre-things that are before things that we use. And when we say the grid is fundamental or ether, I'm going to stick to ether for a while more here until we jump to the grid. When we say that that is more fundamental, it's even more fundamental than the Zug, the affordances. And of course, a Zug, a thing for us, is very limited in a way, because I had to be able to put in my hand, and you put like division. There the pen starts, there the hand stops, and so forth. Or there the hand starts and the pen stops. This expands this. So you think that is something more original. And I think here in this context, you need to add global reality. So there are no colors out there that are isolatable. This is not true. This orange color is not true. Can't isolate it and put it into a pen. This, I know it seemed to be, why, what answer were you saying? Of course you can isolate it. It's here in the pen. That's only orange. There are some cultures, they won't see that orange. They won't even see it as a homogeneous color. It's a fact of the background knowledge. And that same person could also mix different colors and say, this is one color. Although they don't seem to have any connection. So that's a way of expanding the idea, what is more fundamental? The grid is the more fundamental, or the quantum field, which I mentioned before, and oh, the grid is way better. You cannot start with matter and derive and understand the grid or the quantum field. And this goes contrary to what everyone thinks. I challenge you to find anybody out there who's not one of the few quantum physicists who understands quantum fields, who will say, no, atoms are not the most fundamental, or they're not even primary. They have nothing to do with primary at all. It will be very odd. It would be very unlikely. A third take on this is that we get tricked by language. Something could possibly come from the mouth of the later Ludwig Wittgenstein, say language is a potential trap. He wouldn't say it's an actual trap, but it's a potential trap. So connected to our greediness, we make everything into usable objects, and we condition our consciousness in just seeing the things that we want to see, the ones that we can use or take pleasure from. I think pleasure has its connection here. And therefore, you produce these things out of the grid. That reality will be caused by your need, your want. This is actually close to the Italians. When you sit and drink coffee with an Italian, which I did today actually, you have his attention for a while, and then his eyes goes that direction and that direction. He sees the signorinas passing by, the signorini, signorine, and you lost him. So he's in the process of creating these things out of what is potentially more fundamental and richer. Later, if there is any possibility, I have this grand paper how our language changed after Newton into becoming more into normalization, making nouns out of verbs. Verbs are closer to the grid. If you think of verbs as not only things that moves, but there's some verbs that actually indicate things that don't move about. But we think of verbs as a possibility for something to exist. For instance, molding something in clay, molding, it could produce clay pot. So molding is closer to the grid. It's more fundamental, or before, whatever you prefer. And if you got a clay pot, which I have here, you cannot derive molding from it. Molding could just be one of gazillion ways you can sort of derive from this clay pot. It could be much more. So the understanding for today should be limited to understanding the first take, not fully. Don't press yourself with this, because I think I spent 1.5 years reading The End of Time by Julian Barber, and that was necessary. And the pain I experienced from reading this book is undescribable. I think I really burnt a fuse or two while doing that. But then somehow one realizes slowly, and I think that's an embodied understanding as well. It cannot be squeezed out too quickly, preemptively, as I like to say. So give it some time. But I promise you, once you understand this bit better, you will have a more flexible reality. It's more rewarding. And just by happenstance, you get a bonus. You will be much closer to physics. That's just an added bonus. So don't use that as an inclination. I need to understand physics, but see it as an extra. And you will get this understanding without using too much difficult language. And good idea by Frank Wilczek to skip quantum fields. But now I think you have such a background, some of you at least, the ones who follow the series, my dear colleagues Kalle and Mirja, that you already can sort of grasp this pretty easy. Come in and comment. I see you already turned the mic on.
Our friend Allan Emreen, he used to visit schools, and he still visits schools, and he often got the question, who gave birth to God? And I think the mistake is in the thing that emptiness is only empty.
Yeah.
And Allan Emreen, he points at quantum fields. We think quantum fields as empty, but they are not empty. They are very powerful.
Yeah.
Even black holes are very, very powerful things. Absolutely. So there is, and let's say Heidegger had this famous phrase, why is there something rather than nothing?
Yeah.
But I think this phrase is misleading in one way. It creates a dichotomy, harsh dichotomy.
Yeah, it does actually. It does actually.
So I think Heidegger, Derrida would say that there is always a trace of somethingness in nothingness and vice versa. Or as I would say, perhaps to rephrase Derrida or Heidegger, a piece of something flows into nothingness and a piece of nothingness flows into somethingness.
I like
so
that.
There is no, and we can also borrow the yin-yang symbol. So there is always never anything, heavy things that are completely empty.
Let me spin on that first thing you said
Yes.
about our dear friend Allan Emreen, and absolutely excellent. The school children ask many other people as well, what was before God and who created God and so forth. Of course, that comes from the Newtonian / Cartesian grid of emptiness. Why so many people ask what will be after the fullness of life in death? It will be emptiness. That emptiness is actually sort of mistaken or going into the illusion too much of the grid, or not the grid, I should use space-time, Newtonian space-time being more real than the grid, the ether. And that's a grave mistake, because this is very important. The Newtonian Cartesian grid is just one helping tool among others. It has nothing at all to do with the fundamentals of physics. Very usable, without a doubt. This is how we built a house. We can build a bridge. This one most probably was built out of a drawing of some sort. But that doesn't mean take away everything which is put into the grid on the XYZ, the perpendicular orthogonal lines XYZ, and then nothing will be there. Or as in the movie Alien, in empty space, no one can hear you scream. Ooh! So, that is deeply entrenched in our language. Our language changed with Newton. It's changed so much that some writers who are conservative said, I don't recognize this language as English anymore. Can you imagine? And this new language, the new language, or newspeak, if you want to use, I think, doublespeak or newspeak, that's used by everyone. There wouldn't be a looking for original by theologians. All of the theologians are using this language. No wonder they come to the conclusion there is no God or something similar to that, or they are being intellectually dishonest, which you mentioned before. Everyone, because our language already has this inherent. And this is, of course, one of the great challenges, to challenge something that we cannot really be easily aware of. The new use of language from the 18th century and onward, where actually emptiness in the sense of a grid, in the sense of Newtonian space-time is already there.
Yes, absolutely. And we remember we took up greed in another context in this book by Peter Salmon about Derrida. And Peter Salmon, he compared structuralism to the greed. So for the structuralists, everything is similar. And so you can use this different kind of models to any piece of on this earth, and they're also isolated, so to say. So this you can take, say, this grid here for let's say for a piece of Swedish earth, it's exactly similar to another piece of Swedish earth.
Yeah.
And that is the idea of structuralism.
It's the idea of structuralism, and it's also common from that Cartesian, Newtonian, you can name it Euclidean as well. And that they are all replaceable. And of course, this is what we did to Swedish land. I don't think a lot of our listeners or viewers are aware of that, but Sweden is one of the few countries that made an enormous land reform, where they used Newtonian space-time grid, if you like, or rigid geometric system, and they replaced different squares with each other, so to make more compact and put together land for the people. Therefore, when you fly over Sweden, it looks different from, for instance, Germany or France. We don't have villages in that same way. There's one house and there's a piece of land. There's one house and there's a piece of land. That is actually made by the Newtonian grid. And the current king, at least one of them, Gustavus III, he was mighty impressed with the doings, the deeds of McLaren, later renamed McLean, when he got his nobility. But in reality, these projects, the Laga Skiften and all those, were pretty disastrous to Sweden. But they look nice on paper.
Absolutely.
Mirja, you want to add something there? Please come in.
She might be sleeping.
Mirja, Ellare.
I could say that.
Yeah.
Only why should we care about Wilczek? He was the 2004. He got the 2004 Nobel-prize in physics. So we should listen and care about what he says. Absolutely. And this is actually the 20th year anniversary of his Nobel-prize, 2004.
Oh,
so.
Yeah. Tempus Fugit and all that. Wow.
Yes.
My God.
Hmm.
I think this also this is another approach that it's quite a novel approach, and it could be helpful in understanding global reality and all those things, which sometimes is very hard to grasp.
And this is, we can perhaps end even with this image of Frank Wilczek.
I'm just going to move this once we can see him. Oh, there he is.
Yes, the year of his Nobel Prize. This is photo is from the same year, Nobel Prize conference in Stockholm.
Oh.
Let me see. Why did he got his Nobel Prize? Let me see. For the discovery of asymptotic freedom in the theory of strong interaction. Whatever that might be.
And he's Polish-Italian. Therefore, the many consonants in his name. Lovely. Well,
yes,
you can, let's continue next time. Ni kan suga på det här så länge, whatever you say. How do you say that in English?
Yes.
Digest it, it's tough. Don't try to force yourself in understanding this preemptively, and don't lie in the bathtub trying to understand what on earth is this, the grid, or whatever you call it, the quantum field. Give it some time.
Yes.
There's no hurry. Okay, thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl. Thank you, Mirja. And
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. Have a beautiful morning, day, or afternoon, wherever you are. Bye-bye for now.
Goodbye.
Bye.